Arizona's ground is broken. We're talking earth fissures, major cracks in our desert that can open up at any moment.
Arizona is no forgotten patch of the American map. It's a fast-advancing powerhouse in the southwest, spanning over 113,000 square miles of dramatic landscapes and ambitious development. More than 7 million people call this state home, surrounded by breathtaking beauty, unstoppable growth, and a sense of boundless opportunity. This is where the Grand Canyon cuts deep into the earth, sculpted by millions of years of natural force. In the southern region, copper mining remains a backbone of both industry and export. In Tucson, Raytheon ranks among the largest employers, developing missile technologies used by the U.S. military. Expansive solar farms now dot the landscape, transforming Arizona into a national leader in renewable energy. This state has also left a mark on global culture. Director Steven Spielberg spent much of his childhood in Phoenix. It was there that he shot his earliest films with an 8mm camera. In Tucson, legendary singer Linda Ronstadt was born and raised. Over her career, she won 10 Grammy Awards and brought traditional mariachi music into the American mainstream. But under this surface of success and innovation, a silent threat is taking shape. Massive cracks are opening in the desert floor, often without a single sign beforehand. These geological fractures, known as earth fissures, can stretch for miles, tearing through farmland, neighborhoods, and paved roads. Even more unsettling, spontaneous sinkholes are now being reported in areas once thought stable. Entire plots of land can suddenly drop away, swallowing structures and leaving chaos behind. Some geologists are raising alarms. The ground beneath Arizona may be shifting in subtle but dangerous ways. What if parts of the state are slowly becoming uninhabitable? In this video, we'll explore where these mysterious cracks come from and whether Arizona can still be saved. But before we dive deeper into this explosive story, please take a moment to hit that like button. It's a small action, but it helps YouTube's algorithm promote our videos to a wider audience. Cracks beneath the desert. Just south of Phoenix, something is happening beneath the desert floor. At first glance, the land seems quiet and stable, but a slow-moving disaster is unfolding out of sight. Deep, narrow cracks are forming in the ground, stretching for miles across farmland, highways, and open desert. These fractures, known as earth fissures, don't announce themselves with tremors or noise. They appear without warning, often growing unnoticed until the damage is already done. Arizona recorded its first confirmed earth fissure in 1976 in the Wilcox Basin of Cocos County. At the time, it was treated as a rare anomaly, not a sign of a larger problem. But over the following decades, more fissures were discovered, especially in areas where groundwater had been heavily pumped for farming and development. Today, the Arizona Geological Survey has mapped more than 270 fissures, some of them over 10 miles long. What once seemed rare has now become a defining feature of the desert landscape. The danger is not easy to spot. From a distance, a fissure may look like a shallow wash or erosion line in the soil. But when viewed up close, the depth and scale become obvious. Some of these cracks drop over 15 feet into the ground, with steep vertical walls. In several areas, farm equipment has fallen into the openings. Entire fence lines have been swallowed. Sections of roads have collapsed without any apparent warning. Local authorities have started to respond, but coverage is still uneven. Pinal and Maricopa counties now require developers to consult fissure maps before construction begins. The Arizona Department of Water Resources and the Geological Survey have increased monitoring. Yet many areas remain unmapped, and new fissures still appear in places with growing populations. In some neighborhoods, the only sign of trouble is a sudden crack in a driveway or a tilted foundation. Arizona is not the only state dealing with this issue. Earth fissures have also been reported in California's Central Valley and parts of southern Nevada. These regions share a common problem: intense groundwater pumping in areas with soft, collapsible soils. However, Arizona has become the epicenter of the crisis. Nowhere else in the United States have fissures been found in such numbers, with such size, and so close to expanding cities. Most Arizona residents have no idea how close they live to these hidden threats. Many homes sit just a few hundred feet from active fissures. Others were built before modern mapping existed, placing them directly above unstable zones. What looks like solid ground may already be in motion beneath the surface, and once a fissure opens, there is little that can be done to reverse the damage. Do these deep, silent cracks in the ground scare you? Share your feelings in the comments. Our team needs your help. Subscribe to our channel to help more people learn the truth about current events. And now we move on. What's causing Arizona's fissures? The cracks spreading across Arizona are not the result of earthquakes or volcanic eruptions. There are no shifting tectonic plates beneath the surface. Instead, the real cause is something entirely man-made. These fissures are opening because of how we use water. More specifically, because of how much water is being taken from the ground. Beneath the deserts of Arizona lie large underground reservoirs called aquifers. These natural water storage zones sit between layers of rock, gravel, and sediment. For decades, farms, cities, and industries have depended on this water to survive. Wells pump it up for irrigation, drinking supplies, and everything in between. But this system only works when enough water returns to the ground. The problem is that the water is not returning fast enough. In dry years, there's little rainfall to recharge the aquifers. As the state's population grows, so does the demand for groundwater. In many areas, far more water is being pumped out than nature can replace. When that happens, empty spaces begin to form underground. These hollow pockets are left behind where water used to support the ground. Over time, the weight of the land above starts pressing down. Without enough support, those underground layers collapse. That collapse creates movement at the surface. The land sags, tilts, and sometimes breaks apart. What starts as a slow sinking process can eventually rip open the ground. This is how invisible water loss becomes a very real surface problem. The cracks that form are not predictable. They don't always appear right above the collapsed areas. The stress can spread sideways through layers of earth. That means fissures may appear far from the original well or water source. This adds to the challenge of monitoring and predicting where the next one will strike. In parts of south-central Arizona, this process has already transformed the landscape. Fields that once looked level now show signs of subtle collapse. Driveways shift, fences lean. Roads develop deep cracks with no obvious cause, and in some cases, entire structures must be abandoned. Repairing the surface damage is expensive, but fixing what's happening underground is nearly impossible. What makes the situation worse is that it's still ongoing. But you can help stop this with just one small click. Share our video on Platform X so more people can learn about the problem. Do you think Arizona is doing enough to prepare for what's happening underground? Let us know in the comments. A problem decades in the making. The story of Arizona's earth fissures didn't begin last year or even last decade. It started quietly in the 1970s, when geologists first noticed strange cracks forming in rural parts of Cochise County. At the time, they seemed like rare and isolated events. Most people believed the desert was simply shifting, and that the risk was minimal. But by the 1980s, something had clearly changed. More fissures began to appear, and they weren't staying small. Some reached hundreds of feet in length, cutting across farmland and rangeland with no warning. In many cases, they grew rapidly after periods of heavy groundwater pumping or following seasonal rainfall. Patterns started to emerge, but few people were paying close attention. As Arizona's population surged in the 1990s and 2000s, the problem escalated. Development pushed farther into the desert and demand for groundwater increased. Entire communities were built in areas that had not yet been studied for subsidence or fissure risk. At the same time, advances in mapping technology began to reveal how widespread the issue had become. The Arizona Geological Survey started conducting detailed field research and publishing official fissure maps. What they found was startling. Fissures were appearing in clusters, especially in counties like Pinal, Maricopa, and Pima. Some had grown to over 10 miles in length. Others were showing signs of renewed activity, opening wider or extending further with each passing year. By the mid-2000s, aerial surveys and satellite imaging confirmed what many scientists had feared. The problem wasn't going away. In fact, the number and size of fissures were increasing. From the air, these long black lines cut through the desert like scars. On the ground, they damaged roads, disrupted irrigation systems, and left large sections of land unusable. What makes this situation unique is how long it took to be recognized. For decades, fissures were misunderstood or ignored. Some were blamed on erosion or weather events. Others were simply patched over and forgotten. But the deeper scientists looked, the more they realized that Arizona's geology was being reshaped by decades of water overuse. Some efforts were made to manage the risk. Local governments began to restrict construction in certain fissure-prone areas. New developments were sometimes required to check for existing cracks before building. But in many cases, the regulations came too late. Homes had already been built, and critical infrastructure was already in place. This history of slow recognition has left Arizona playing catch-up. The damage is not just physical. It reflects a long-term failure to understand the land beneath our feet. What began as a few unexplained cracks in the desert has become one of the state's most persistent and expensive natural hazards. Today, more than 270 earth fissures have been officially documented across Arizona. Experts believe that number will continue to grow. The conditions that created the first fissures have not gone away. If anything, they've intensified. More people, less water, and hotter temperatures mean the ground is under more stress than ever before. What was once viewed as a strange local curiosity has become a statewide concern, and unless long-term groundwater use is brought under control, Arizona may be dealing with the consequences of this decades-old problem for generations to come. Did you know earth fissures have been forming in Arizona for nearly 50 years? Do you think this long-term problem has been taken seriously enough by state leaders? Share your thoughts in the comments. The most affected areas. Earth fissures are not randomly scattered across Arizona. They follow patterns tied closely to geography, groundwater use, and population growth. While fissures have been discovered in several counties, some regions are far more vulnerable than others. These areas are not only seeing more frequent fissures, but also deeper and more damaging ones. Pinal County is at the heart of the crisis. Located between Phoenix and Tucson, this rapidly growing region sits atop one of Arizona's most depleted aquifers. The county has experienced intense agricultural activity for decades. Thousands of wells have drawn water from deep underground to support cotton fields, alfalfa, and housing developments. As water levels dropped, fissures began to appear more frequently, especially around the towns of Eloy, Arizona City, and Santan Valley. In some parts of Pinal County, fissures now stretch for several miles and cut across both public and private land. Aerial images show long black scars running through the desert. On the ground, these openings have damaged roads, cracked pavement, and even shifted the foundations of buildings. Engineers have been called in to monitor movement and determine whether the ground is safe to build on. Maricopa County, home to the Phoenix metropolitan area, has also seen growing fissure activity. Although much of the urban core is protected by treated water and canals, outlying zones still rely heavily on groundwater. Areas near Buckeye and Queen Creek have shown signs of fissure formation, particularly in zones where new housing has spread into undeveloped land. Here, fissures often go unnoticed until roads start to sink or concrete begins to split. Pima County, which includes Tucson, faces similar risks. While the city itself uses a mix of groundwater and imported water from the Central Arizona Project, the surrounding rural areas do not. Places like Vail and the Avra Valley have experienced fissures linked to historic and ongoing groundwater use. In some neighborhoods, residents have installed monitoring poles to detect small shifts in the soil. Outside these counties, fissures have been confirmed in Cochise, La Paz, and Yavapai counties. While less populated, these regions share a key feature: heavy reliance on local aquifers. In Cochise County, where the first fissures were recorded in the 1970s, new ones continue to emerge. Local farmers have reported land suddenly opening up in fields that were once considered stable. In La Paz County, cracks have appeared near major roads and utility corridors, raising concerns about long-term infrastructure damage. What ties all these places together is a shared history of intense groundwater extraction. Whether used for farming or urban expansion, the result is the same. Empty spaces form underground, and eventually the land above begins to collapse. As Arizona continues to grow, more of the state's open land is being developed, and often those developments push into areas where fissures are already forming. The threat isn't just about where fissures have been, it's also about where they might appear next. Some counties are now requiring developers to check fissure maps before building, but in many cases, the maps are incomplete. New cracks have emerged outside known zones, catching planners and residents off guard. In the end, some parts of Arizona are more likely than others to face the consequences first. But the risk is spreading. With each dry year and each gallon of groundwater pumped, the odds of new fissures grow across the state. Do you live in or near one of Arizona's most fissure-prone counties? Have you seen signs of shifting land, cracked pavement, or unexplained damage in your area? Share your experiences in the comments. Damage on the surface. When earth fissures reach the surface, they stop being a hidden threat. They become a visible and destructive force that reshapes everything around them. These cracks don't just scar the landscape, they cause real damage to infrastructure, agriculture, and property. The moment a fissure breaks through, the cost begins to rise. Roads are often among the first to suffer. In affected areas, asphalt can buckle, sink, or tear apart without warning. Crews patch the damage, but the underlying cause remains. In some cases, the cracks reappear only weeks after repair. This repeated failure creates dangerous driving conditions and rising maintenance costs. Utility lines are also at risk. Water, gas, and sewer systems run underground in many neighborhoods. When a fissure opens beneath them, these lines can snap or rupture. Leaks are difficult to trace because the ground continues to shift. In rural areas, a broken irrigation pipe might go unnoticed for days. In urban zones, it could trigger a flood or gas leak. Buildings are not immune either. In some neighborhoods, homeowners have reported sudden cracks forming in walls and foundations. Doors no longer align. Floors become uneven. What starts as a small cosmetic flaw can grow into a structural issue. Some residents have been forced to abandon properties when the damage became too severe. Fissures can also disrupt farming operations. In agricultural zones, a crack running across a field can cut off irrigation flow or damage equipment. Tractors and harvesters can get stuck or damaged if they cross unstable ground. In some cases, entire portions of farmland have been taken out of use. Insurance coverage is often limited or unavailable when damage is linked to fissures. The financial toll of this surface damage adds up quickly. Repairing cracked roads, broken pipes, and damaged homes can cost millions, but the problem runs deeper than the visible surface. Some fissures plunge over 30 meters into the ground, and trying to fill them completely requires massive volumes of material. Engineers rarely attempt to seal an entire fissure. Instead, they focus on stabilizing key sections, usually near buildings, pipelines, or roads. Even then, there's no guarantee the ground won't move again. Repairs usually begin with a full inspection of the affected site. Engineers check the depth, width, and direction of the fissure to see if it is still active. If the crack is stable, crews may fill it with compacted soil, gravel, or concrete to reduce further collapse. Damaged pipelines are replaced or rerouted to avoid unstable ground. In some cases, roads are completely rebuilt with reinforced foundations. For buildings, the process is more difficult. Foundations may need to be underpinned, and structural supports added to reduce further movement. These repairs take time, and the results are not always permanent if the fissure continues to grow beneath the surface. Local governments have started using drone surveys and laser-based tools to detect early signs of surface shifts. These technologies help create detailed elevation maps and identify areas where the ground may be moving. But even with this data, there are limits to what can be done. Once a fissure forms, there is no easy way to stop it from spreading. In some cases, residents have taken matters into their own hands. They install motion sensors, dig test pits, or mark visible cracks with flags or paint. These DIY methods are a last resort in places where official monitoring is limited. Communities that once ignored the problem now treat it as a daily concern. School routes, water delivery, and emergency access all have to be planned around known fissure zones. Damage from earth fissures doesn't happen all at once. It builds over time. The land may shift by just a few inches each year, but that is enough to break pavement, twist pipes, and put buildings at risk. And because the cracks often spread quietly, the damage can become serious before anyone knows what's happening. Have you or someone you know ever dealt with surface damage from shifting land or underground movement? What signs would make you start to worry about the ground beneath your home? Let us know in the comments. Mapping the invisible threat. One of the most difficult things about earth fissures is that they are hard to detect. They do not give off vibrations or sounds before they open. There are no tremors, no flashes, no warning signs visible to the average person. A fissure can form in dry soil, beneath a field, or right next to a home, and no one will notice until damage appears. To fight this invisibility, Arizona has developed some of the most advanced fissure monitoring systems in the country. The Arizona Geological Survey has mapped hundreds of fissures using a mix of ground surveys, satellite images, and drone data. These maps show exactly where known fissures exist and where new ones may form. They are updated regularly and available to the public. The process begins with aerial and satellite photography. From high above, fissures appear as thin, dark lines cutting across the desert. Some stretch for miles. Analysts look for changes in surface elevation and soil color to detect activity. Once a potential fissure is spotted, ground crews inspect the area and measure the depth and width. In many cases, sensors and GPS markers are placed nearby to track subtle shifts over time. Some fissures are so narrow at first that they are only visible in the data. These are the most dangerous because they may be active without showing on the surface. A small movement underground can widen the fissure over time. With enough rain, vehicle pressure, or soil collapse, that hidden crack can suddenly become a trench. Mapping these threats is a race against development. In fast-growing parts of Arizona, new roads, homes, and pipelines are being built every month. Without proper data, construction might begin in a high-risk zone. Once a structure is in place, even a minor fissure can cause major damage. That is why some counties now require developers to check fissure maps before building permits are issued. Still, not every area is covered. Large parts of rural Arizona have never been fully surveyed. Some landowners don't even know that fissure data exists for their region. In these places, the first sign of trouble might be a cracked driveway, a leaning fence, or a door that won't close properly. By the time a fissure is confirmed, the damage is already underway. New tools are helping. LiDAR scanning, which uses laser pulses to measure surface height, can detect even slight shifts in the land. Combined with GPS and satellite systems, these methods are now able to track ground movement within inches. Some counties are beginning to share this data with planners and utility companies, but the process takes time, and full coverage is years away. Experts say that mapping is only the first step. Knowing where fissures are located helps avoid disaster, but it doesn't stop the ground from moving. As long as groundwater continues to be overdrawn, the conditions for fissures will remain. Maps help people stay out of the most dangerous zones, but the risk is never fully gone. Arizona is at the forefront of fissure research, but it still faces major challenges. Monitoring a constantly changing landscape is difficult, and the balance between development and safety becomes harder to manage each year. Have you ever looked up fissure maps for your area? Do you think builders and city planners should be legally required to avoid known fissure zones? Share your thoughts in the comments. How climate and growth make it worse. Arizona is growing fast, but the land beneath it is under increasing stress. What was once open desert is now lined with roads, homes, and utility corridors. Every new development adds weight to the surface and pulls more water from deep underground. This growth, combined with climate pressure, is creating the perfect conditions for fissures. The state's population has surged over the last few decades. With more people comes more demand for water. Cities, farms, and factories all tap into underground reserves. In many areas, wells pump faster than nature can recharge. As aquifers shrink, the ground loses its support and begins to settle. Meanwhile, the climate is shifting. Arizona is getting hotter and drier. Less rain means less water soaking back into the soil. Higher temperatures increase evaporation and water use. Over time, the lack of moisture weakens the desert floor. When stress builds underground, the surface begins to break. Some of the most active fissure zones are now found near expanding suburbs. As construction pushes outward, homes are built on land that may already be compromised. Heavy buildings, roads, and water systems add pressure to soils already prone to collapse. What once looked like safe ground is turning unstable. Farming plays a part as well. Many crops grown in Arizona use large amounts of groundwater. Fields require constant irrigation, and wells run deep. The result is further strain on aquifers and greater risk of collapse. Some farmland has already seen fissures that split fields and destroy equipment. Rain can trigger sudden failures too. When heavy monsoon storms hit weakened ground, the pressure can open cracks fast. In these cases, fissures expand quickly, damaging infrastructure and cutting through roads. The problem is growing from multiple directions. Population, heat, water use, and building pressure are feeding into the same system. And unless serious changes are made, more land will break open in the years ahead. Do you think Arizona's expansion is moving too fast for the land to keep up? Can planning and conservation prevent future cracks from forming? Share your thoughts in the comments. What's next for Arizona? Arizona isn't collapsing, but parts of the state are shifting beneath our feet. Earth fissures are no longer rare or confined to rural farmland. They are appearing near homes, schools, and public roads. This slow, silent damage is forcing experts to rethink how and where development should happen. In many regions, the ground is no longer safe to build on without a detailed review. Before a project begins, engineers now check maps, inspect soil conditions, and look for signs of subsidence. If a fissure is active, construction plans may be altered or canceled entirely. This extra caution adds cost and delays, but it's becoming the new standard in high-risk zones. Some cities have responded with stronger building codes and improved groundwater management. They are limiting the number of new wells, promoting recycled water use, and investing in long-term planning. In certain cases, communities have halted development in known fissure zones, but enforcement varies and some areas continue to grow despite the risks. The real challenge is time. Even with better data and modern tools, it takes years to fully understand how the ground is changing. Fissures can appear long after wells have been drilled and homes have been built. What looks safe today might shift tomorrow, and once the land begins to fail, repairs are slow and expensive. Some scientists warn that Arizona's current growth path may not be sustainable. With limited water and rising land instability, hard decisions may lie ahead. Should development be slowed in sensitive areas? Should some regions be declared unsafe for future housing? These are questions no one wants to answer, but many will soon have to face. At the same time, there is room for hope. New technologies are helping detect fissures earlier than ever. Drones, satellite imagery, and laser-based surveys allow experts to monitor ground movement down to the inch. This data makes it easier to prevent damage before it starts. But prevention only works if action follows. Arizona is at a turning point. Growth has brought jobs, industry, and opportunity, but it has also stressed the land in ways we are only beginning to measure. The next few years will determine whether the state can adapt or whether the cracks beneath it will continue to widen. Do you think Arizona should slow down development in high-risk areas? Or can innovation solve the problem before it gets worse? Let us know what you believe in the comments. Can we fix the ground? Earth fissures leave permanent marks, but that doesn't mean Arizona is helpless. The state may not be able to stop fissures entirely, but there are ways to reduce their impact and slow their spread. The key is to focus on prevention, not repair. Once underground layers collapse, the damage is done. Filling a deep fissure with soil or concrete won't fix the cause. It can help in specific locations like under roads or near pipelines, but the risk of future collapse remains. That's why experts say the solution lies deeper, in how we manage water, growth, and development across the state. Water use is the most important factor. Reducing the amount of groundwater pumped from aquifers can slow or even stop the formation of new fissures. Some communities are now limiting well drilling and encouraging conservation. Cities are using more recycled water for landscaping and industry. Farmers are testing new crops that use less water and upgrading to more efficient irrigation systems. Planning also plays a major role. Modern mapping tools can identify which areas are most at risk. By using this data, developers can avoid building on unstable land. Some counties have started requiring fissure clearance before issuing building permits. While this adds steps to the process, it helps protect both property and people from future damage. Technology is improving too. LiDAR and satellite imaging can track subtle ground movement across large areas. These systems give scientists a clearer picture of where pressure is building and when a fissure might form. When used properly, this data allows local leaders to act before problems become disasters. Education is another critical piece. Many Arizona residents still don't know what fissures are or what signs to look for. Public awareness campaigns, school programs, and neighborhood alerts can help people recognize shifting land early. The sooner a fissure is spotted, the more likely it can be managed safely. Still, there are limits to what can be done. Some fissure zones are simply too unstable for development. In those areas, the best option may be to leave the land untouched. Turning high-risk zones into protected spaces, such as parks or buffer areas, can prevent future loss. Arizona won't reverse decades of water extraction overnight, but with smart decisions, new tools, and better planning, the state can limit future damage and adapt to its changing ground. Do you believe Arizona can strike a balance between progress and protection? What solutions would you support to reduce the risk of future fissures? Join the conversation in the comments. Thank you for exploring the hidden corners of Arizona with us. Click on the video you see on the screen to check out other hidden discoveries on our channel.